It's a very dangerous time for our country.
The goal is to put him in jail because they're so afraid of his voice.
I am your voice.
A lot about Donald Trump scares them.
Let's look at everything. Campaign, his family. Let's get foreign eyes on him.
Isn't that election interference?
It's not interference if we do it.
They cheat in many different ways. That's all they're good at.
Trump has beaten back every attack against him.
We're going to fix our borders, and we're going to fix our elections.
Vindicating Trump. Tickets available now. Opens nationwide in theaters September 27th.
Hi, everyone. This is Jim Hoft, and today I'm so thrilled to have with me movie maker and author Dinesh D'Souza, especially on this day. Today is the day of his new film release. It's in theaters across the U.S. We put up a link on our website. I hope people check it out so that they can go to the movie this weekend. It's called Vindicating Trump, and it once again covers some of the election issues that many of us saw in 2020, and Dinesh is following up on this very important topic. And it's an amazing film. I already got to see it, so I hope everyone gets out there. Dinesh, thank you so much for some of your time today.
Jim, I'm delighted. I'm very excited about the film. If I can mention the website, it's vindicatingtrump.com. If you plug in your city or your town, the theaters will pop right up. It's really helpful for people to see a film like this in the opening weekend. It kind of puts fuel in our rocket, enables the film to expand to more theaters. So the film was made for the theaters. A couple of my earlier films, Jim, because of COVID and the aftermath of COVID, I couldn't release them in the normal theatrical mode. But this one is in 850 theaters. It's all over the country, multiple showings a day. So kind of no excuse not to see it. Round up the family and friends, and please go this weekend if you can.
It sounds great. We will continue to promote it. It's an excellent show. And by the way, thank you so much for tackling this topic again. You started the conversation with 2,000 Mules. Actually, you've been discussing this for a long time, but 2,000 Mules was a blockbuster. And really opened a lot of people's eyes. And now you follow it up with Vindicating Trump. So very important.
Yeah, this is an important section in the film, maybe the most shocking part of the film. And it's called The Ballot Makers. And the reason it's relevant to a film about Trump is that even after you make the case for Trump, and even if you say, hey, listen, the American public is not going to be suckered in by Kamala or by the policies of the Democrats, they're going to be leaning toward Trump. The question becomes, yeah, Dinesh, but what about the cheating? What about all the stuff you talked about in 2,000 Mules? Well, in 2,000 Mules, we were sort of looking in the rearview mirror because we were looking in the middle of 2022 at things that had happened in November of 2020. I think what I do in this film is a little different, is I say, all right, it's not going to be easy for the Democrats to do exactly the same thing that they did before. If they deploy mules at 1:30 in the middle of the night with backpacks, they're patriots who are going to be looking for that. They're going to sort of surprise them right at the drop boxes. So what is a new way that the Democrats could cheat? What is a vulnerability in our system that we can identify in advance? Not, of course, to instruct cheaters, but rather the opposite, by blowing their cover, by showing, hey, listen, there's a back door open at Fort Knox. It becomes more difficult to take advantage of it because, of course, once something is exposed, it's much harder to cheat in that way.
Absolutely. There was a couple questions I had after watching the film. Several questions, but two important questions. One was, when you showed this one part with the people who were, and I think we can discuss this, who were actually buying the votes, the ballots, and the paper. That blew my mind because we've been covering voter fraud, elections since 2020. Really hard, as you may know. We've actually been caught in a couple lawsuits because of this. We've had some excellent reporting. We had uncovered the ballot drop boxes in Michigan. That was Gateway Pundit who got that footage. But in this, I just couldn't believe that we've heard of buying votes, and we've covered those stories. We've heard of those stories where people are getting paid for their vote, but this is something entirely different. This is people buying paper and the raw materials to make votes.
To make ballots. I mean, honestly, when I first heard about it, we had a couple of investigators looking at this, and they're like, you can buy ballots, you can make ballots. I'm like, wait, are you joking? And they're like, they kept describing to me the process. And I said, listen, guys, this is too unbelievable. If you come on the film and just say you can do this, people are not going to believe you because everyone thinks that you got to go to the state. They send you your absentee ballot. There's no other way to get a ballot. And I said, so don't tell me about it. Actually, go do it. Go buy the ballot paper. Show me that you can get ballot stock, legitimate ballot paper delivered to your door. Then show me how you can take the information on a ballot, let's say an absentee ballot. Show me how you can make 10,000 ballots. Show me then further how you can make ballots in such a way that they will be counted, that they will be taken by the tabulators, that they will actually work. So the whole operation is detailed in almost a mind-blowing way in the film. And I don't want to distract from the main theme of the film, of course, which is to make the case and make the sort of no-holds-barred case for Trump. But this is a very important aspect of it. Trump himself talks about it. I raised the issue with Laura Trump, who's, of course, the co-chair of the Republican National Committee. Even she goes, I'm blown away. I've never heard of anything like this. Well, she has now. So hopefully the RNC, hopefully the Trump campaign, they're keeping an eye out for a new potential way to cheat, which, as you say, has not been discussed before. I mean, I thought I was relatively well informed after 2000 Mules about election fraud, but this was complete news to me.
That it's just absolutely mind-blowing. One thing too, you talked about Lara Trump, and she's done a phenomenal job. I think I'm very glad that she's in the position she is. One thing she said though is that they're bragging about how they're putting in attorneys and people into the polling places on election day. But I always thought, isn't that a little late? Don't they need to be, by the time the ballots come through the mail, get to the election counting center, it might be too late. What do you think of that?
I do think that you have to realize that you're dealing, in the case of the Democrats, with very sneaky characters who are going to be pressing the system at every possible stage. The key thing to recognize about an absentee ballot, and this is really also the key to how you can make ballots, is this. That unlike a $20 bill, well, like, why is it, Jim, that you or I can't make $20 bills? Well, the answer is $20 bills have watermarks. They have identification numbers. Tellers are trained to be able to tap a bill and look at it and be able to tell if it's counterfeit or not. There are systems for detecting counterfeit $20 and $100 bills. A ballot has none of that. No watermark, no serial number. And while you're supposed to write the address and sign the envelope, the moment that you open that envelope and separate the ballot from the envelope, there's a kind of permanent divorce. You can never put those things back together. So you can never go back later and take absentee ballots and trace who was the guy who signed that. So this is a little bit of what makes audits very difficult to do and very difficult to catch any kind of fraud. It's almost like the counterfeit money is now in with the real money, and there's absolutely no way to tell a real dollar bill from a counterfeit bill. This is not the case, of course, with dollar bills, but it is the case with ballots.
Yeah, that's really important. My twin brother was a big auditor in Asia, based out of Hong Kong for years, ran teams across Asia. And one thing that blew him away was the fact that in other countries, they treat ballots like money. They do, just like what you said. But here in America, it's willy-nilly. You go into these election rooms. We've seen video of ballots all over the place, ballots under tables, all these different things. It's very different in America, and that must change if we want to have secure elections, I would think.
There's absolutely no question. And look, I think that I don't want people, out of their anxiety over this issue, to somehow feel that the system has already been gamed and that they shouldn't participate and that they shouldn't vote. We have a very good chance to win the 2024 election. Kamala couldn't be a worse candidate. The policies of Democrats couldn't be worse. Admittedly, there's a juggernaut of media propaganda trying to convince people not to believe their lying eyes, not to believe their pocketbooks, not to believe all the crime and the open borders that they see around them, not to believe that Kamala is a cackling idiot, even though they've heard her saying really stupid things, but to believe in this kind of newly manufactured, new and improved, never seen before Kamala Harris, who's a true genius. I mean, this is all aimed at suckering the American people. And maybe it's going to work, but I don't think it is. And the point I want to make in this film, Vindicating Trump, is this, that Republicans need to kind of get over our silly anxieties. I hear so many people say things like, well, I don't really like Trump, but I like his policies, or he needs to shut his mouth, or please tell him, Dinesh, to stop tweeting. And I say to these guys, listen, this is not a smart thing to do, because first of all, the things that you don't like about Trump are all tied into his steely determination, into his sort of the fact that he's an 800-pound gorilla, the fact that he has enormous guts and courage. I mean, any other Republican facing 2 criminal charges, forget about 91, would have long fled the field. Trump not only endures it, he does his rope-a-dope, he ignores the gag orders, he drives the judges insane, he kind of comes out ahead of the whole thing. And then look at his reaction to the 2 assassination attempts. I don't know a person alive who would respond in that way to either of the 2 assassination attempts.
Oh, it's so impressive, and you're absolutely right. We've been under the attorneys who've been going after us from the other side, and it drains you. It's constant. There's so much pressure on you, and you see Trump, and it's just like it brings a tear to my eye when I watch Trump maneuver through all of this, because we know a little bit of what he's been through. I know you've been through a lot, Dinesh, in your time, but Trump it's just unbelievable what he's capable of persevering and succeeding through all of this. One thing you said in the movie, you had compared him, well, a couple times to Abraham Lincoln. I thought that was really important.
I think it's important on 2 counts. One, of course, is the fact that you could say of Lincoln, as you could say of Trump, that you've got one group of people who would take a bullet for him. And then you've got another group of people who will cheer, maybe silently cheer, if somebody tries to put a bullet in him. And this is not a normal level of polarization. It is extremely abnormal. And even in Lincoln's case, it was not due to Lincoln the man. It was over the issues. That's really what got people so polarized. But with Trump, it is over the man. And so part of the enigma that I try to resolve in the film, and there's an accompanying book coming out shortly of the same title, Vindicating Trump. By the way, the website vindicatingtrump.com, where you can order the book and also get movie tickets. And the point I want to make is explaining this enigma. Think of why the left calls Trump a dictator. Now, you and I can say he didn't do anything dictatorial in office. He's already had a term in office. If there was a dictator, it would have come out. But it's interesting that the left is so insistent on that accusation. They never called George W. Bush a dictator in the same way. With Reagan, they'd say, well, he's a washed-up movie actor. He doesn't understand the world. But they didn't say he was a dictator. And so the question is, why is this particular accusation being launched against Trump? And that's something we explain in the film.
Can you tell us more about that, how you came about with your decision and how you explain that in the film?
Yes. I'll explain it in a kind of a funny way, maybe. Before I came to America, Jim, I didn't know much about Americans. I would watch movies, and my favorite genre was the Western. Admittedly, I was a kid and I was a teenager. I watched all these Westerns, and then I realized after a while they all have the same plot. It turns out the plot is very relevant to our situation now. Think of it this way. There's a town, it's Pleasantville or it's Shinbone, something like that. Everything's very harmonious. There's an old sheriff with a toothbrush mustache, an old rifle. I'm going to call that guy the GOP establishment, right? And then some gangsters come in, and they're extremely ruthless, and the poor sheriff is no match for them, and they shoot up the town. They take over the saloon and the provision store. They terrify the town, and Shinbone is just not the same again. It's not Shinbone anymore, right? But then comes a stranger over the mountain. This is Clint Eastwood. This is John Wayne. And this guy is a little suspect. Not a lot is known about him, but the gangsters recognize immediately that he is their solitary threat. They have to get rid of this guy. He's the one guy who could destroy their whole operation. And the theme of the movie is the various ways in which they try to buy him off. They try to intimidate him. They try to make him leave town. They try to beat him up. Ultimately, of course, they try to kill him. And so here, I think we have in a nutshell the issue of Trump. Trump is, in a way, he's a larger than life figure. And he has some resemblance to the gangsters because they're bullies and he knows how to deal with bullies. Now, it's very important to realize that Trump never bullies people who are beneath him. Have you ever seen him insult a waiter or a doorman? He never does that. But he insults people who deserve to be insulted, normally people who have insulted him first. So you would think that the Republicans would welcome this guy because the Republicans, by and large, are invertebrates. They don't want to fight, but this guy does. He's willing to fight on their behalf. And yet you have Republicans who say idiotic things like, well, I wish he would stop saying those things. I wish he would fight like we do. And I'm thinking, well, if he fought like you do, he would be in the same pathetic, miserable, groveling position that you are now. So this is my point. Trump was a massive cultural celebrity before he even entered politics. And the left knew right away, we don't have to worry about Jeb Bush. We don't have to worry about John Kasich. Trump is the one guy that can undo the whole operation, the whole remaking of America that began with Obama in 2008 and has been going ever since. Trump is the threat that can stop that.
I loved how you described that. And, it's so true. The average man, they're the ones who just love Trump. They just absolutely love Trump because he's always defending them. And we see with the media and the elites and the Hollywood, how they're always talking down to the American people in flyover country where I lived most of my life. Here comes Trump, and he's the big New York developer, and he's the one to defend everyone. He's the one to defend us. It's amazing. And of course people love him, and they can't take that. They can't take that from him. No matter how hard they try, no matter how hard they try to gaslight the population, people aren't buying it.
You can almost think about, remember that iconic scene? It's in the movie Trump coming down the escalator, 2015, when he first ran for presidency. I think that was the fateful crossing. And what I mean by that is that I almost imagine all the cultural elites at the top of the escalator. And Ellen is there, Ellen DeGeneres and Oprah and all the cool cats. And Trump, of course, is the coolest of all the cool cats. They all want to be seen with him and photographed with him. And then he does something very important. He gets on the escalator and he goes down. He descends. Now, where does he descend? Well, I envision at the bottom of the escalator the forgotten American. The guy who has not benefited off the last 25 years, that hasn't seen his standard of living improve, seen his jobs traded away. Neither of the two parties have paid attention to this guy. And suddenly comes this unlikely billionaire. And he's like, I'll take up your cause. And so you can see right there why people are so loyal to Trump, because he didn't have to do it. He didn't need it. It isn't his cause, but he took it up anyway. And at the same time, I think you see that from the point of view of the people at the top of the escalator, the cultural elites, they're like, this guy's a traitor. He used to be one of us. He's now gone down over there with all the pitchfork people, and he's turned against us. So the sense of betrayal, the sense that Trump has somehow sold out or stabbed them in the back, I think all of this is part of why the people who once loved him turned so ruthlessly against him.
Absolutely. And, here's Trump, someone who finally is defending the middle class. And we saw even in his first term, it was the lower middle class who actually had the highest percentage in a raise in their I think compared to the billionaires who didn't get as large of a profit from Trump's policies. Of course they're going to love him. Trump was the first one who did that. That was beautiful the way you explained that. I also couldn't help but notice a couple jabs at Paul Ryan in the film that was just delightful. How did you come about that?
Well, this is my documentary style of filmmaking. I make these movies for the theater, and I realize that the kind of typical way of doing a documentary, interview some people, take some stock footage, string it together, to me, that's not a documentary. And that's why some people have actually called my films docudramas. I realized that the way to make a film really good, a nonfiction film, it has to have a lot of the elements of fiction. Interesting characters, fast-moving plot, a suspense, escalation, a kind of emotional arc, really good score or music, a climax, all those things. And so in this film, quite apart from the centerpiece of it, which is the one-on-one with Trump, quite apart from the section called The Ballot Makers, there are, I think, revealing and entertaining and even amusing recreations. Because think about it this way. I've often wondered to myself, let's just say Trump is in the courtroom. He gets these 34 felony convictions in Alvin Bragg's courtroom in New York, right? Now, how do people, let's say at CNN or at the New York Times, react to this? Do they watch it and go, well, that's very important, we got to cover it in the news tomorrow? Or Do they jump out of their seats and go, fantastic, that is wonderful, high-fiving each other, Jake Tapper, we got him, Jake, great work, this kind of stuff. So what we do is we imaginatively recreate the DNC war room, the media war room, even the sort of intelligence agencies war room, to give you a kind of window into what it must sound and feel like while all these cases are moving forward and all these very important events are occurring. So I think it just adds to the pace of the story and also the entertainment value of the movie. I believe a lot of times people come to me and they go, Dinesh, you need to do some messaging. Why don't you make a movie about the border? And I say to these guys, listen, people go to the movies for entertainment. They go for fun. If you make a movie fun, you make it entertaining, then you can actually give people a lot of information and do a lot of messaging inside of that. But that is the way to make a good film. And now that this is my 8th time around the block, so to speak, the 8th documentary film, I think we've tried to get better and better with each one.
I think you're accomplishing that. Yeah, that was great. It was just a nice touch to throw in Mr. Ryan in the middle of all this. And of course, we know that those things are happening. Everybody imagines the same thing as you, Dinesh. We know how the Democrats are reacting. We know when Nancy Pelosi has to shush her people when they're getting Trump, and they're not supposed to cheer, and yet here they are clapping, and she has to silence them in the middle of Congress. So anyway, I just loved the film, Dinesh. I'm so glad you're out there pumping out these really important pieces, and I hope that everybody who is listening will go out and get a ticket this weekend as soon as they can. I just was very impressed with it. It was really entertaining, and of course, we have Donald Trump, and how blessed we are to have Donald Trump today. How do you think the election looks then, now that you've revealed a lot more in this film?
I think it looks pretty good. I mean, it looks pretty good because the Democrats are running a sort of a junta here, aren't they? I mean, they picked Biden. He didn't have a real primary in 2020. They've been running the show. We have an unnamed group of people running the country. I mean, think about that. And they've obviously seemed to have made a sort of at least tacit agreement with Biden that if they ever agree to swap him out, he's got to go. And I'm pretty sure Kamala is in on the same basis. Okay, Kamala, no primary for you. We'll move you to the front. But you're going to have to do what we say and say what we tell you to say. And if at some point we decide to swap you out, you have to go out with a smile. So very creepy stuff. I mean, this is unprecedented. And certainly I haven't seen anything like this in my lifetime. I want to make one more point if I can, Jim. And that's, people sometimes ask me, hey, Dinesh, how are you going to get your film to independence? And I have one answer to that question. Don't worry about the independents. If all the patriots and the Republicans and the conservatives and the Christians go out and see the film, it will force the left to take note of it, which means it will force the left to attack it. And because they always start by trying to ignore it. Not a word about it. It's in 850 theaters. They pretend it doesn't exist. But with 2,000 Mules, they couldn't. It was too big. So they had to attack it. And once they attack it, lots of independents who aren't normally all that plugged in go, oh, I hear there's a lot of ruckus about that. Let me go check out that film. That is the way to bring independents to see the film, either in the theater or perhaps later through streaming or DVD, is they watch the film when they hear about it, and they want to figure out what the ruckus is all about. So yes, if you have a Democratic member of your family or a buddy, then you can buy his ticket and take him along. By all means, do that. But the best thing you can do, round up your friends, like-minded people, go see the movie in the theater. If we have a strong opening weekend, the movie expands. We force the left to take notice, and that's how the film will have a major cultural impact, just like 2,000 Mules.
Sounds great. We'll promote it this weekend. We'll look for the numbers, and good luck to you, Dinesh. This is such an important film. Thank you for putting this together. There's a lot of people out there who really love Donald Trump, and I think they'll love him even more after watching this film.
Thank you very much, Jim.